a blockbuster. Let's welcome Michael, the older brother of the house, Robert MacNaughton. Over here. You may not know his face, but you were delighted by his acting as our favorite alien. Let's welcome the heart of E.T., Matthew De Meritt. I fell in love with her after seeing her in the movie 10. And sure, she was in The Howling, Cujo, and Critters too, but everyone wanted her to be their mom after E.T. Welcome, Dee Wallace! And you know an actor has range when you can play an adorable little tyke who falls in love with an alien and Norman Bates. So here we go. Elliot is here. Welcome, Henry Thomas. Thank you all for coming, and we really love having you here at Pensacon. Hope you've had a great weekend.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Excellent.
I'm going to hear the woo again. That's great. You know, I'd just like to get started by asking how you all got, involved in the film. I'm sure it's not just, oh, we had an audition. I mean,
I was born.
At an early age, I suspect.
Stephen had seen me, I believe, in The Howling. And I went into audition for used cars. Didn't get it. But he just saw the mother in E.T. because he works very far in advance in his work. And so when E.T. came along, they just called it and offered it to me. It's kind of a Hollywood story, maybe.
I went through the audition process sort of late in the audition process. No.
How old were you?
I was 14. I was doing a play off Broadway. And I missed all the preliminary auditions, but somebody had seen the play I did and wanted me to read for a movie called The Entity, Barbara Hershey. They said, we'll fly you out to California from New York. I didn't get that, and they said, oh, I'm so sorry, this didn't work out for you. I'll make a phone call. I hear Steven Spielberg has an interesting role for somebody your age. So in a way, I lucked out too, although I would have loved to have been in both. But
No, it kind of worked out, this one, didn't it?
Yeah, this one was nice. Yeah.
Henry, how'd you get involved?
So I was involved pretty late in the auditioning process because they had kind of cast Elliot with another young actor initially. And
you know who it was?
He had never, I do.
Yeah, Robert knows. Yeah.
But they never settled on him. They were never quite right with him.
See, oftentimes what they were doing, like Robert was part of the process when they were, they would get different kids together and, play D&D and stuff like this and see how they all interacted as a group. It's kind of like a chemistry test.
Yeah, and one of the auditions was at Harrison Ford's house. We played Dungeons and Dragons with his kids, who at the time he was living with the woman who wrote the screenplay, Melissa Matheson. And his kids were our exact ages. His oldest, Ben, was my age, and Willard is his other kid. Yeah. And that was
Michael and Elliot were kind of based on those two real boys.
And pretty much everybody, all the boys that you see in the movie playing D&D were the ones that ended up in the movie, except the boy who was playing Elliot. And it wasn't that he was an okay guy, but it was like he was very actor-y, kind of like he had an extensive list of credits, and I could tell it just wasn't quite a fit. And an accomplished actor, but anybody, who see the film, and how could it have ever been anybody but Henry? And Stephen had the wisdom to realize that.
And Matthew, you were so young when you got involved in this too.
Yeah, it started out, I used to go to, I was born without legs, I don't know if anyone knows that, but I used to go to UCLA, I know, right?
Wait,
it was
what?
a train accident. It was a shark. It's more exciting, right? And it was, you
tell the chicks it was a shark. Yeah, a surfing accident. It was a surfing accident.
This was not a boating accident.
So anyway, I used to go to UCLA Medical Clinic for physical therapy because they wanted to figure out how am I going to walk. So they gave me prosthetic legs, different contraptions to get around on, but a skateboard always worked for me. So that didn't work out, but Universal Studios got in touch with my old doctor there to see if there was anyone who was of a short stature to fit in the costume. And my doctor recommended my name, and that's when they called me. So I went down to Carlo Rambaldi's studio to do a screen test to see if I could, how it would work out, basically. So I walked on my hands, and Spielberg was impressed, and he basically told me I got the job. But it wasn't on video camera.
Was that before or after shooting had started? Do you know?
That's a good question. I think it might have been before.
Okay. And which scenes are you in the suit?
So I like to call myself the stunt E.T. because they realized that the main actors that played E.T. wouldn't be able to do any of the scenes where E.T. fell down, got hit by a refrigerator door or whatever. So Robert told me recently that Spielberg, he reminded me actually that Spielberg came to me like a couple days before and asked me if I'd be willing to do those scenes. And I said, because he didn't really tell me why. And I said, yeah, I say yes to everything. So thankfully I said yes to that, and I got some of the most memorable scenes of the movie, so it was awesome.
I mean, you don't know how athletic Matt was and is, but at the time, okay, his biceps were like he was, you know, jacked. He was jacked, and he was so athletic. You know, as far as like, I remember there was one kid we didn't like.
Oh,
that was amazing. Who will remain nameless, but we were all at school together. So
he was Robert's stand-in.
Yeah, it was my. Well, now you just gave more. No, I don't know. He was kind of teasing one of the girls that was kind of like, you know.
Rusty. Yeah, his name was Rusty.
That's right. Okay, well now, sorry, Rusty. But he was teasing one of the girls, and Matt sort of stood up. Matt, in a valiant gesture, sort of went up this ramp that was on the back lot at Laird Studios. Went up the ramp and launched himself off the ramp and tackled this guy because he was to stop him from.
He launched himself off the ramp, grabbed onto the post.
That's right.
That held up the porch, swung around it, and hit the guy.
Cut that out. Yeah. It was really cool.
I take a bow, but I'm not physically equipped to take it.
Best thing about doing these things is I always learn 15 new things I never did.
Me too.
But Dee, how was it being the adult in the room?
What?
Oh, no, you got that wrong.
That's a big illusion.
Really.
Big illusion. That's not true. I was a good mother to all of you.
Yeah.
I took my job very seriously as the mother in the role and as the mother off screen taking care of all of these kids.
She really, and with the scenes where E.T. was dying, Drew, it was very upsetting for Drew. And, you know, they have some really great moments on screen where she's holding Drew and Drew's asking her if she's dying, if E.T.'s dying, and she says, I'm afraid so, sweetheart. I'm about to start crying right there. And can we wish him to come back? But that was sort of her role with Drew. She was taking care of her off screen too, because Drew was very impressionable, and you know she acted like she was.
Well, she thought E.T. was alive.
Yeah.
Found her over talking to E.T. when he was standing in a corner, not alive, and so then he appointed a couple of people to work the hydraulics of the hydraulic E.T. All of the time in case Drew went over there.
So it would react. It couldn't speak, but it would like lift an eyebrow or something with something she was saying.
But I went to get her on the adjoining soundstage, and I said, okay, Drew, now we're gonna go do the scene where E.T. dies, but you know E.T.'s just acting like we are. I know, Dee, do you think I'm stupid? So I pick her up, we walk over, she takes one look of E.T. on the table and goes, Dee is dying! Darling! And of course, Stephen's going, roll it.
Gotta get this.
I mean, at that age, reality and fantasy are pretty much the same thing. So they go in and you know, Danny and Cujo don't even get me started.
Oh, yeah.
Cameo when it was cut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't.
Yeah, he was
With
the
me.
principal. He was the principal in the office when Elliot gets taken in for setting the frogs free.
So he had a scene with me and a scene with you, right?
Because when you come to pick me up at the
Yeah.
school, you guys had an exchange.
Yeah.
I was so jealous. I was like, you know, Raiders had just come out. I was like, Henry came back to school, because if we weren't filming, we were in school. So Henry came back to school and he said, I just did a scene with Harrison Ford. He wasn't like that, by the way. Henry, I characterized him like that. He was not like that, but he was excited about it. Because we were both like huge Raiders fans, huge Star Wars fans.
So you got to, did you at least flirt a little with Han Solo?
Ew. No, I was very married to the very hot Christopher Stone.
I'm gonna be happy Mom oohed me, so I feel good.
The E.T. voice done.
The E.T. voice. So
Yeah.
they had a few different people at different times, but the woman that ended up being kind of the main source for the voice, what was a lady named Pat? What was her?
Pat
Welsh.
Pat Welsh, yeah. And
She was Welsh, like you.
yeah, she was
Deborah
Welsh.
Winger.
Yeah, Joe.
Deborah Winger was also, yeah.
I found out because until recently she was my neighbor, and I thought she initially was going to be like they were gonna use her voice, but she was just doing a favor for Stephen,
Yeah.
so he could edit with a voice that sounded sort of vaguely alien. It's like it was never supposed to be her, according to her. Like they were doing something called a click track, which
I heard
is
that.
yeah, and I had not known that. I thought she, you know, just had gotten too well known that people would recognize her voice. But she said, no, she was just doing a favor for Stephen.
She had a cameo in it, right?
Yeah, she's in the film.
She's
The Halloween scene.
she's in the Halloween scene. She's the
She's
doctor.
got a goblin mask or something on, and she's holding a little poodle.
And she limps.
Like I said, I
Yeah,
learn
that's
all
right.
these new things.
I have a question over here.
So this was the biggest movie on the planet for like several years after it came out. We think of blockbusters as being big budget, but when I go back and look at the movie, it's really small scale. It takes place in one
Very
neighborhood.
small.
You could take out a couple of special effects and it would be like an indie film almost. To that extent, could you talk about when you were filming in the locations, what it felt, what the shooting schedule was like, how many locations you guys were at, and how that compares to other movies that you did subsequently? How it felt in comparison?
I
I'm
remember
out on
the
that
first of the film, it was all on stage.
Yeah.
Everything was on stage.
Yeah, it was pretty standard. I mean, the process wasn't very different than any other film.
See, I would disagree with you.
Oh, you would?
Because we started at 7, we ended at 7.
Oh,
Most
because of the
days,
kids, because of the
because
kids,
it
yeah.
was all the kids, and you can't legally work them. So most independent films, you can start at 7 and work till 9, 10, 11, 12, you know, so in that respect. And also, this was supposed to be Stephen's little film. Poltergeist was supposed to be the big hit, you know. And I think sometimes maybe that made it better, you know, because there wasn't the pressure of, and it was only,
Self-financed.
the budget was $1 million and
It was 11 million. The ET itself accounted for $1.5 million of our budget. But also, he had self-financed it because it had been turned down by every studio. Universal agreed to release it, but he had to set up financing for it, which meant there was no studio executives like looking around saying, "What are you doing this? What are you doing that?" And he brought it in under budget and on time. I think even under time. But it was, 66-day shooting schedule, and we finished on day 65.
Which is
you know.
ridiculously fast.
So, because he edits in his head, and he has storyboards and everything, so he knows what he wants before he films it, instead of filming everything long takes and then deciding in the editing room later.
Interesting, the tone of the film too, because there is conflict in it, but there's really no big villain in it, except if you count the guy with the keys. And even he turns out to be a nice guy at the end.
Yeah.
And he's Peter Coyote, and he sounds great.
Yeah, we love Peter.
Not my real question, but just because it was brought up, you say Harrison got cut out. Isn't he still the voice of the unseen teacher in the dissection scene?
No, that was a different.
Is he trying to sound like him? Because it really does.
No, I don't know, but that actor was there for the first week as the teacher in the class.
That was Mark Hamill.
No, we're making news in England.
Some of the actors that were in the movie. The cop was Richard Dreyfuss.
But my actual question, and this is a bit off topic, is for Henry. The moderator had mentioned you playing Norman Bates before. Now that was the first time you worked with Mick Garris, right?
That's correct.
And you worked with him a couple other times as well, including Desperation. And it seems like that may have led to these other Stephen King adaptations that you've, and of course Dee's done one as well. Was there any specific through line there? Like, was that on purpose for you or your agents, or?
No, not at all. I met Mick through Psycho 4, and when I worked on that because the producer and the director, or the producers of the show, I had known them and worked with them on Cloak and Dagger when I was younger, and so they thought of me, and then they brought me in to read for Mick, and Mick liked my read and wanted me in it, and then he cast me in a couple of other things after that because we had a pretty good experience, I think, working together. But no, the Stephen King thing was purely happenstance. I think just because.
Stick around Hollywood long enough, you're going to wind up in a Stephen King adaptation.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many, and there's so many that get done, and I was just in the right place at the right time for those projects.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Movies do you guys like?
Well, I'm a huge fan of The Thing and Alien. I went to see Alien when I was 9. I begged my parents that I could go see Alien because I had the most fascinating ad campaign, and I flipped out at the chest burster scene, and I had to leave the theater. Completely embarrassed my mom and my dad. I've been able to stomach it since then. I'm old now.
I don't blame you at all. We're just like.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I was a huge Star Wars fan of all of the Star Wars films. Well, the original Star Wars films. Yeah, those were a big influence to me. And actually, when I saw Star Wars in theaters, and when it was released, I thought, that's pretty cool that you can do that as a living, and I would like to do that. And that was kind of the first time I had thought about being an actor.
When he's showing E.T. his toys, I can vouch for this, because when he's showing E.T. his toys, he used to have the Darth Vader little carry case with all the little action figures in it, and those were Henry's toys that he used to just carry around on the set.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
It's my collection. It's very important. I had allowance. I would make $5 a week, and I would go to Woolworths, and I would buy one action figure, and I would put the next one on layaway. And then the next week when I'd come back, I'd get 2 action figures and put one in layaway. And so in a matter of weeks, like I had all 12 figures, you know, and then I just couldn't stop.
And if you were smart, you would have had them now and sold them for $500,000.
Yeah. But
You know,
I was never smart.
I like the Star Wars movies for a whole different reason. Even back then, I liked it for the philosophy and for Yoda and for the truth that came out of those movies and the guidance that we all got from those movies. And now, not only do I spend a lot of time acting, my other business is energy healing and teaching people how to create their lives consciously. And so I don't think it's by any mistake that I was drawn into movies like E.T., you know. And then, of course, so I spend half my life healing people from fear and the other half doing horror films. Somehow, it works really well for me.
I'm a little bit twisted, so I like dystopian type, the Terry Gilliam movies like Brazil, 12 Monkeys, those kind of, and I like anything time travel. I'm a sucker for any frequency, anything that has some sort of time travel element.
All right, thanks. The experience of making the Xfinity commercial back in 2019. If you haven't seen this,
Well, it was a day, and I was just, what struck me was with technology where it is today, everything was just so much easier, and I was floored by the constraints that we had worked under in '82 and working under those technological restraints, and how tough it was to get certain things with the animatronic thing. You know, the E.T. creature wasn't always functioning, firing on all cylinders. You know,
You have to go to Radio Shack all the time to get parts.
Yeah. But it just struck me as how much easier it would have been to make that film today. But the way that we made it, the fact that everything was physical and everything was a real, it was a real gag, you know. It wasn't painted on. It's more personal, and it's like listening to a record on vinyl versus digital, because if you listen to a vinyl record, it's actually a physical sound, but a digital sound is not actually a physical sound. It's a reproduction of a physical sound, but it's not visceral. Like, the thing that makes things real for people is when they're visceral. And I think E.T. is a very visceral experience for audience.
Everything you saw E.T. do in the movie, we saw as we were acting with it. Everything. Like, you know, they didn't, you know, yeah, they did stuff where we're looking at tape for the spaceship and the bikes flying. But as far as E.T. was concerned, it was very personal. We had the same experience you did.
Yeah, it was kind of like working with another actor for me, which is weird, I know to say. He was so real to me.
It would do different reactions on different takes, depending on how you said the lines or the tone of voice you had.
All right, what you got over here?
Hey, so I grew up with you guys, and hi, Mom.
Hi, honey. Have you been good?
But my thing is, so we go to Universal every now and then in the studios and like ride E.T. the ride, and every time I get emotional, just that feeling of being a kid again.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any like experiences with that, like when you go to the ride?
Every time I go to the ride, every time I watch the movie. I must have watched the movie from personal appearances 150 times, probably. I cry every time he takes off. Every single time. Every time I close that, here it comes, see? Every time I close that door and Elliot is standing there, and I thought he'd been lost.
I cry in the part I mentioned with you're holding.
Part of my childhood, and I'm so grateful that y'all are here. But I have a question. Were there any set props that you walked away with when she
I think a lot of dice went missing on the set. I seem to remember that.
Everybody put your phones down.
The statute of limitations is probably done over 40 years later, so we can.
What do you wish you had walked away with? And we'll put it like that.
Everything.
I wish we would have been allowed to keep our bikes.
Henry Star Wars toys.
My cat dress. I kept my cat.
I kept my costumes, the shirts. So.
Well, they were your shirts.
Yeah, a couple of them were real shirts. So.
Matthew, you don't have an ET suit sitting at home, do you?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Your presence is such a treat. Thank you for your work. I was wondering during the making of this, was there a moment where you just went, what is happening right now? And wow. Was there like a wow moment for you? Where it's like this?
No.
No.
No, most of the time I was going to, how much longer do I have to sit in this damn? I mean, they went to school. I sat in my dressing room and sat in my dressing room and sat in my dressing room.
That's the thing, like when you work with kids, when you're an adult.
And dogs.
And dogs,
and
right?
aliens.
They don't have to shoot you out. They can keep you there all day. So
Doing nothing.
They're going to do the kids first, and then they're going to get to you later when the kids have to go home. So you sit around all day.
I mean, oh my God! You know the big important scene where they take off and it turns into the rainbow. Like I had been sitting in my dressing room for days, and all of a sudden, the first AD comes, or no, it was the second AD. What was his name? Anyway, no, not John. Anyway, Dan.
Dan, yeah.
Came and said, Dee, hurry up, we have to get this scene before lunch. And I went, okay, what scene are we doing? Well, we're doing the scene, you know, where he takes off and turns into the rainbow and it's all emotional. And then we get to the set. And Stephen goes, okay, all right, we got to get this before lunch. And I'm going, what am I doing? And Stephen explains it again. He says, okay, roll it. And I don't know, I just saw the rainbow and I felt the tears. It was like crazy, you know. It was like one of the moments that was really important that you thought, well, I'm going to take a lot of time to prepare for this. And sometimes it's just better if you don't.
Not only coming in and waiting all day, but coming in at the first call or whatever it was, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., getting in makeup because they had to have the adults ready to go in case something went wrong with the kids and, you know, they couldn't film the scene that they were going to do with the kids. You know, they had to have the adults ready to go as a backup.
The adult.
The adult.
Thank you.
Yeah. They had to have, as well as, ready for her close-up. But they but it was really, I know now how hard that had to have been because you're prepared to go, but.
Yeah, Stephen asked me one time, he said, why does that bother you so much, Steve? I said, Mr. Spielberg, actors are like racehorses. You pick them up from their stall and they go, oh, I'm getting ready to run. The race is coming. And you take them and you groom us and you brush our hair and you put our makeup on and you take us to the gate. And pretty soon, if we don't get to run, we just want to break the gate down. And he looked at me and went, oh, I never understood that before. Next day, on the set, 7 a.m., never worked.
All right.
So I was looking at IMDb. I had no idea you had such a prolific acting career, and very impressive. And I saw
people do.
I saw that you had done some soundtracks. Did you do any songwriting or is it singing?
Yeah, I've played music for quite a while, and I managed to, bend the producer's ear a couple of times and get a couple of my songs on the soundtracks of films that I've been in, and a couple that I haven't been in. But yeah, I don't suffer the delusion of making money off of music anymore, so I just play at home.
Thank you.
All right.
Don't give up your dream. You're really good.
Yeah, you really are. Dear John was one of the ones that used your song?
Let's see.
I think so. Because I saw it recently, and I was looking at the credits, and
so I have a song in the movie that's out right now called Sam and Kate, and I perform it in the film, and then and then I have a film that I was in called Niagara.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, that was the one.
It was in the late '90s, and I had a song on that soundtrack. Yeah,
All right, everybody. Let's thank our guest for being here today.